Hey, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
So good. What are you up to?
Nothing much, nothing much. Excited to talk to you.
Oh man, you're making my whole day. How's everything?
Everything is well. Everything is really good. I'm gonna get us set up and we can jump right in. You feeling good? All right.
Man, I'm really doing well.
Thank you for joining me. I have a special guest with me. He is a leading voice on relationships and emotional wellness, the host of the Dr. John Delony Show, and author of Redefining Anxiety. Please help me welcome the guru of mental health and wellness, Dr. John Delony. Dr. John, how you doing, sir?
What's up? Hey, I'll take guru, man. I'm gonna tell my wife that you said that. That's awesome.
Yes, indeed, you are. You are the leading voice and helping so many people here in this day and time. We got to talk though before we get into our topic of redefining anxiety. How have you been? How has this pandemic adjusted or shifted things for you?
It's been a zoo, man. Like, it's been wild, and I took this new job right before everything set off last year, and then we had this 18-month plan to, I never been on the radio. I didn't even have social media when I started doing this, and then all of a sudden the world got sideways, and my boss said, "Hey, we're going to put you on Figure It Out Live," and so it's been just a nonstop mess. And then you've got on top of that, man, how do you navigate my own marriage in the middle of all this? How do you navigate moving? I got two little kids, and how do you navigate their schools and home and all that? So, man, we are figuring it out, but we've just been real fortunate through the whole thing. So, we're taking it as it comes. How about you?
Very well. It's been some adjusting. I'm used to being out and amongst people and going to events and just enjoying the busyness of things. So I've had to settle down, which I don't mind, but it's now getting a little challenging, ready to get back and just do some things.
I'm done with being home. I like to be out and about too, man. It's wearing me out, but
yeah, doing what we got to do. But
right.
You help so many individuals as pertains to mental wellness and relationships. We're here now in this pandemic, and we're going to talk about how that works when it comes to anxiety, but so many people are dealing with it on so many levels, not just from COVID, just finances, so many things that is going on. But you have a very powerful message titled "Everything You Know About Anxiety Is Wrong." And when I saw that, I said, I have to listen to this because I want to hear your perspective. Share with our listeners what that is all about and why we probably are not getting it right when it comes to anxiety.
Well, thanks, man. So I think there's two things about it that we are way off on. Number one is we have pathologized, which is just nerd speak for, we have gone to war against any discomfort, any uncomfortable feeling. And we've really reduced all of the human experience the last 10 or 15 years. And we call it depression, anxiety. If I'm sad, you got depression. If something bad happens in my life, you're depressed. And if I'm worried or stressed, even if it's good worry, if it's good stress, I got anxiety, right? So we've reduced all of our human experience into those two words. And so I would say we've got a vocabulary problem. More than that, when it comes to anxiety, man, all anxiety is it's an alarm system. It's just a signal letting us know that things aren't well, right? That we're in situations where we don't have any control. We're not safe in our situation, or our relationships are messed up, and we are not tethered in with other people. And so the analogy I like to use is like my house is on fire, and the roof's on fire, my kitchen's on fire, and then me and a therapist and some idiotic buddy of mine, and we're all sitting on a ladder, and we're trying to figure out how to get the batteries out of the smoke detector, right? Like that's man, this smoke detector is so loud. If we can just get the batteries out of that thing, then we're going to be all right. No, your house is burning down. All that's doing is telling you, hey, your house is on fire. And so instead of looking at anxiety as the problem to solve, look at anxiety as, what is it trying to tell me? What in my ecosystem environment is out of whack, right?
One could only wonder what has been your experience, whether personally or dealing with others, with anxiety.
Dude, man, I got some. If there is a privilege on planet Earth, I was born with it, man. And to find myself in my backyard one night at 2 a.m. crawling around looking for cracks in my foundation that didn't exist, and I remember thinking, I probably should go see somebody. I remember laughing, like, I should probably go see somebody, right? I got laid low by it. And it was this pursuit of, if I get the right job, the right title, if I get if I work and I'm everything to everybody. I was looking for all these external plugs to these internal holes. And at some point, the alarm started getting louder and louder. I'm going to silence it this way. I'm going to run from it that way. I know what I need. I need a warm bath and a candle and an exercise program. That'll shut it off, right? And so I just kept pushing and pushing it. And the word we use in mental health is leakage. At some point, you can deal with your body, or your body's going to deal with you, right? It's going to shut you down at a real inopportune moment. So, yeah, I've experienced it personally. And then just working with hundreds, if not thousands of people over the last couple of decades, man, it's just something people struggle with. Their body's trying to tell them something and we don't like to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned anxiety being that alarm. Obviously, if the house is on fire, your first objective is to get out of there. That's something you can't control. Yeah. So now we find ourselves here as a human race dealing with something we're trying to control, but we're having some challenges.
Yeah.
How are we to, I guess, keep ourselves centered and not be anxious, particularly those who don't understand what's going on? You know, we have the scientists who are trying to understand. They have a little bit more working knowledge, but the lay people, we're like, what is happening?
Come on, man.
How do we maintain our mental space?
How deep do you want to go? You want to go real? Let's go down a rabbit hole. So what happens when we all look up and the way we were treating people, we find out is hurting people? We thought that X number of establishments were designed to protect us, and they can't even agree publicly, right? I thought my neighbor and I thought my wife and I believed about the same things politically. And then suddenly we find out, I don't even know who you are, right? So everything, and then suddenly people aren't going to church for a calendar year, right? That just gets taken out from under people. Suddenly, I don't know my neighbor. Suddenly, my neighbor is the weapon, right? The thing that we need to be whole is other people. And suddenly, I'm walking down the street thinking, is that person going to give me COVID? Is that person's kid going to make me sick, maybe kill me? Is that person hate me because of what color I am, the way I look, the way I dress? Is that person hate me because who I vote for? And suddenly, dude, everything that keeps us well is now on fire, right? And so what do? We all go home and we turn Netflix on, man, and we get an anxiety blanket and we're gone, man. We're out. I'm out of all this stuff, right? And so when you find yourself in those situations, so I'll back it up to something that his name's Dr. Andy Young. He's the guy that trained me in crisis stuff. So one of the things I would do when I was a part of my journey getting well was I was doing crisis response. So I would work after hours. I was a dean of students at a law school. And then at night, I would take on calls with the SWAT team, with police departments, and I'd go do death notifications. I would go sit with somebody whose kid just took their own life, or somebody who passed away, lost their loved one. And that way that the folks who were trained to do other things could go do their job, right? And my job was to sit with folks in hard moments. And I tell you what, man, he would always tell us all the time, calm is contagious, control what you can control, and that's all you can do, right? And so if I brought my to a situation, man, I made everything worse. And so for me, it's about breathing, about getting in a situation and saying, I cannot control that every doctor gets on TV and says something different. I can't control what politicians are saying. I can't control the hate or non-hate in people's hearts on wherever they happen to be. I can control me. And so here's the things I'm going to do that I know keep me well. And here's the things I know that I can start doing right now to help. And then I'm going to encourage my wife. I'm going to encourage my kids. And I'm going to go try to love local. And suddenly that's going to start moving out this way, right? I had to turn off all the noise, man. I just had to quit watching the news. I had to quit some of those things that I took for granted so that I could start focusing on the things that I could control and start from there.
You talk about working in crisis management, and as we stated earlier, you help so many people with their mental and emotional space. I'm just curious, being a professional in the industry, because there's so many that are hands-on dealing with people in crises. How do you remove yourself when you leave the office or leave that space and not carry that burden on top of everything else that you probably have personally? How do you disconnect, or is it even possible?
For me, it's a I've got a process. I got a ritual. It didn't sound so sacrificial, right? Like we were Vikings, right? But I've got a process that I've got to hose my boots off before I go into my house, because I can't take what I saw in the middle of the night. I can't take that hard conversation. I can't take what's on my radio show and dump that on my kids, right? So I've got a process, and sometimes when it's real heavy, I'll go see a professional and we'll talk it out. And I'll let that cycle through. And when it cycled through, I can be well about it. The cornerstone there is I've got to be highly intentional about knowing that I saw some things that people aren't supposed to see. I sat with somebody in a hard moment. I'm not tougher than anybody else. I've got to go process that so that my wife isn't the unlucky recipient of misplaced anger, misplaced frustration, misplaced fear, etc. But for me, it starts with a ritual, with a process.
So good. We've got to jump into a little bit on relationships, which I know so many are dealing with challenges. So many are falling in love, but then there are a whole lot of folks
Come on, man. It's a mess.
That are falling out of love.
They're not even allowed to leave their house, man. It's like everybody's stuck. It's crazy.
You deal with marriage on your show, the Dr. John Delony show. How is it dealing with some of your clients now and some of the scenarios that you're seeing? What are you seeing when you on your show as it pertains to relationships?
I think over the last year, probably two things have bubbled up to the surface. One, we thought we knew who we were, partnered with. We thought we knew them. And then all of a sudden you hear them be like, wait, you're voting for who? And you know what I mean? Or what do you mean that's a good policy? So I think we found a lot about ourselves and our relationships. I'm hearing that a lot. I suddenly looked up and I have no idea who you are, right? Or you went down a path and I thought we were together on some of these big topics, big rocks. We're not. So now what do? I hear that a lot. And then the other thing I hear much more common is this. Man, we went into crisis mode in March of 2020. Like the world just started shutting down. We had to figure out layoffs and furloughs. How are we going to pay our bills? We had to figure out homeschooling. We had to figure out work from home, set up an office in the garage, right? Or in my car, wherever. We had to figure it out. People became really good roommates. They became very good co-pilots to fly in the ship that was their home unit. Man, we started communicating, but we stopped connecting. And so we've suffered a lack of intimacy. Couples aren't hooking up anymore. Couples are not spending time just being with each other. They're not dating anymore. They're not going out on dates anymore. And so we've gotten really good at being co-CEOs. Man, we have fallen out of desire with each other. We let the intimacy go by the wayside. And so now it's how do we rekindle passion that is going to help undergird and get us through the next 10 years, the next 15. How do I re-fall in love? How do I find desire again? How do I want to go make out with you instead of watching Netflix? Netflix is just easier. I'm tired, right? You know what I mean? How do we rekindle desire? And I had to do that. Like, it was news to me that you practice desire. You practice intimacy. That doesn't sound, man, Romeo and Juliet and Titanic, man, the Notebook, they lied to us. Man, they didn't tell us that on those movies. And so it's about re-engaging new sets of tools, man.
So true. And I hate to lay this one on you because I know you're a man of faith, and when you marry for life. But are there ever scenarios where you say maybe you guys should consider separation, or ultimately the bad D word, divorce?
Yeah, the bad. So I think I am, if somebody can't control their volume, somebody can't control their anger and aggression, somebody can't control their violence, right? And all of those in my head are on the same trend line of violence, right? Then I'm always a big fan. If somebody's got to step out for 30 days, somebody's got to step out for 60 days, and you've got to learn some new skills and learn new tools that you don't have because you're actively hurting people. And I'll also tell you this, men and women, dude, we can be really violent with silence. We can hurt people with silence. And so if people are actively hurting people in a relationship, yeah, I'm big on, we got to have a timeout here. We got to separate, especially if you got kids in the house, because you're actively modeling and hurting kids too. I am high on marriage. And I do think we race to divorce real quick. And so is there seasons for divorce? Absolutely, man. There's no question about that. I wish people would wait longer before they cashed in their chips and went to go find, again, like I was saying, go find another external plug to something that's internal here, right? But yeah, there is seasons, man. There is moments. This thing's done, right? This thing's done.
Wow. Back to the redefining anxiety.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Go ahead.
This comes from the same crisis responder, right? Nobody makes good decisions in the middle of a house fire. When bullets are flying, nobody makes good decisions. And so if you have found yourself and you're safe, right, and you feel like I'm out of love with the person I'm married to right now, what I would tell you is this is not a season to make a permanent decision. Everything in your house is on fire right now. So this is a season to sit down and have some really hard conversations, to commit to practicing some things, commit to putting your oxygen mask on first and becoming well, because you're probably not. None of us are, right? We're all figuring this out on the fly. But man, don't make a permanent decision. Don't end you've been married 10 years, 15 years. Don't just stop right now. This is not that season. Wait till the smoke clears on this thing. You can assess the damage on your house. And then, you know what I mean? Then you can make some of those decisions long-term.
That's a very important point to make. Yeah. Very important, because I don't think many are viewing it from that vantage point, because you don't want to go buy a house and the one you were just in is on fire. First, see if this one is repairable. So definitely a great point. Great point. On anxiety, you use the house fire as an analogy, but how does anxiety, I guess, express itself humanly? What do we look for? What are the signs that someone is pretty anxious?
Oh, that's a good question. Man, that's the first time somebody's asked me that. Good for you. Here's the annoying thing about it. It's all over the place. Some people experience anxiety. Probably the easiest way to say it is the fight or flight or freeze, but those look differently, right? And I'm condensing about this much grad school work, right, into a short thing. But if somebody comes to you and they set your alarms off, some people, their alarms or the hands get real sweaty and they feel this desire, this need to get away. Some people feel like they've got to turn on the attack mode, right? I'm going to come back. Oh, you say that? Oh, listen to this. I'm instantly hearing it and I'm coming back at you. And some people they literally leave their body, right? I am going to distance myself from this. I'm just numbing out right now. And so knowing how your body responds to stress, me personally, I withdraw. I get a real weird heart. My heart starts beating real fast out of the blue. And I get this weird stomach feeling, right? My stomach drops. It gets this warmth in it I can't really describe. I know my body well enough now to know when anxiety alarms are kicking off. And so now I can stop and say, hey, what's going on here? Because then the next thing I do is I reach for, man, I got a sugar problem, like a problem. And so I will reach for my other girlfriend, little Debbie. I will reach for bags of gummy candy. And now I've got to stop and ask, or I also, man, I'll just cut people up with verbally, right? I'll make you feel dumb. And I know when I'm going on the attack that way, almost always that's a me problem, not a you problem. And so when I feel myself responding in those ways, I just need to pause and stop. And so what I would ask people to do is when you find yourself in those situations, stop for a second and just feel your body, man. Is your heart racing? And that's the key to learning how to come up with alternative behaviors, alternative ways of letting your body know, hey, we're good right now, and we can move on.
When you put it that way, it's almost safe. Is it safe to say we all have some level of anxiety, maybe just different extremes?
I think we all have stress. We've all got stress, right? And stress on the whole is good. That's why we work out, man. We put stress on our muscles that it can't handle or it can barely handle. We break it down, and then our body says, hey, we don't want to do that again. So it goes back and builds those muscles bigger and stronger. So next time. Or we go for a run, right? Stress tells us, man, you better study for that exam or you're going to fail. Stress says you better remember your anniversary or she's going to set your hair on fire while you're asleep, right? So stress is good. It's when it becomes pervasive, when it becomes too heavy and we can't handle it, then those alarms set off, right? Or when we're lonely, man, then those alarms really kick off. But yes, every single person experiences that.
Mm. I know we've all seen anxiety or mental illness on some point, but let's put some, I guess, some visual pictures to that, because
Okay.
we have this big, I don't even know what to call it, but it's just this need for mental health in our community, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody's saying go mental wellness, mental health, and then we have the subject on anxiety. So give us the differentiation between, I guess, normal anxiety, something that you can manage on your own, and mental illness that needs professional help.
I love that. So I would say there's a difference between being mentally ill and having varying degrees of mental health. And then I think there's a difference between being well and unwell, right? And so when I hear mental illness, I think of physiologically different brains, schizophrenia, some forms of bipolar disorder, right? Brain lesions. I think of things that there is a physical difference in your head. When I think of mental health, is often learned behaviors that become automated responses to trauma, to fill in the blank, right? To systemic issues, all sorts of things contribute to a not well mental health, right? Or I'm unwell. And that usually stems from people hurting you, not being safe, not feeling like I've got food. I don't have people that I don't have people in my tribe. I don't have a community, right? And so then your brain, all of us have this combination of experience and genetics, and those things work together, and then it spreads out all over the place. So you and me may handle stress totally different because of how our parents raised us, how our community has treated us over the last 25 years, how much education we have, how much fill in the blank, right? The pathologies are the same. I like to say that addiction is addiction, whether you eat, whether you drink, whether you do heroin, whether you find another girlfriend, or whether you become a lawyer and work 90 hours a week and make $1 million. You're all running, right? You're running all the way across the board. One of those we give a lot of money to, and the other we put you in jail for, right? It's the same pathology. It's the same challenge. And so there's a famous quote that says, I thought I could take away my client's anxiety or depression and they would be well, but they weren't. They were hollow. And so instead of focusing on pathology, which I think psychology has done for the last couple hundred years, I like to focus on, man, how do you live a well whole life? And then over time, man, you develop behaviors and thoughts and actions that it really crowds out the rest of this stuff, right? And so I think everybody could benefit from having a neutral third party in their life, right? Having somebody who will be honest with you. I had this realization. We're working on a book here at the office, and I thought, you know what, man, we've entered an age of the hotline. We no longer have a neighbor. We no longer have 3 or 4 people that are ride or die that are our friends that I call. Our government has had to put up a hotline for people to call who's got nobody to call. And that to me is not an indictment that we have a mental health crisis. That's an indictment we have a loneliness crisis. We've become so untethered from our neighbors, man, and our community, and people who will just love us for us, won't judge us, aren't trying to compare. They'll just be with us. And really the cornerstone, I think, of mental health, of being well, is having people. For a lot of us, if that person doesn't have the skill set right, I've got childhood trauma, I've got abuse, I've got whatever, then you need to go see a professional, right? And to learn some new skills. A good counselor, a good psychologist, they're just a teacher that's going to walk with you, right? And they're going to teach you some new skills so that you can then get out back into the real world and develop relationships, get friends, and have a series of whole well behaviors. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense. And the whole neighbor piece is so interesting. And I chuckled to myself because I have a neighbor who I don't talk too much, don't even know their name. He's the husband and wife and a couple kids. And one day, we just happened to be coming out the door, and I threw my hand up just to wave. And I'm not from the South, but my parents are. So, you just say hello when you see your neighbor.
Yeah.
And he looks over his shoulder because he thought I was talking to somebody behind him. You know what I mean? And it shocked me. I'm like, well, why would he, because it just dawned on me at that moment, like, you know what? We've become so detached that when you speak and just say hello, people have to wonder, oh, wow, you're speaking to me. You know what I mean? Hey, how you doing? You talking to me? And I said, wow, it was just so interesting to see that. But I have a question for you, and I'm excited to ask you this question, and this came to me when you were talking. You talked about being unwell and that whole mental health piece. As a doctor, as a professional, as a studied individual on the subject, where do you lie when it comes to pharmaceuticals, when it comes to recommending drugs to maintain a sense of wellness? Where do you lie on that?
So I think there's seasons where, like for anxiety, for instance, there was a season in my life when my alarm didn't function right anymore. It went off all the time, 24/7. It never didn't go off. And so what medication, anxiety meds allowed me to do for a season was it shut that alarm down so that I could go sit with somebody and learn some new skills, so that I could heal those relationships. I'm absolutely not a fan for most things. Some things, yes. Not a fan of a long-term pharmaceutical solution to most of our challenges. I think most of our challenges are relational based. I think most of our challenges are action and behavior based. What many of us have experienced is we just simply got trapped. There's chemical responses, there's brain group, right? There's neural pathways. This is just how we respond to situations. And sometimes medication can really help with that. I do think we've entered a season where we have over pathologized every feeling, everything. We look for a pill for that. A good example, man, is like when I was working in colleges, I can't tell you how many students would come to my office and tell me, hey, my mom and dad just dropped me off for school, and then we went home and dad packed up and moved out. He's waiting for me to go to college and moved out. I've got depression and I need to get some meds. And what I would tell them is, hey, you don't have depression. You're sad, right? You're supposed to be sad. This is a season of darkness for you, man. Your family just broke up. This sucks. This is hard. You need some people in your life to walk with you through this season. It's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean just because you're feeling this heaviness and this discomfort, that doesn't mean you're broken. In fact, it means your body's working just like it was supposed to, right? If you have a season where you're not safe, you got no one to call, and your boss is telling you I'm going to lay you off, and there's a global pandemic, and you think your neighbor might kill you, your anxiety alarms, brother, should go off. They should be going off real loud because you might die, and that's what they're for, right? And so turning that alarm off with medication isn't help anybody, right? It's telling you something. It's telling you to work towards, hey, how can I be well? It's when it goes too far, and every time you turn the TV on, your heart starts racing. Every time you see the remote to turn the TV on, your heart starts racing, and you know I'm going to be up for the next 42 hours because I can't sleep, right? That's when you know, hey, I need to go get some help here. And so I do think there's a place for it. I think it's gone way over the top. And I always want folks, my philosophy is I want to have an exit strategy before I ever put anything in my mouth, right? Before I take a pill, I want to make sure, the same as I do with antibiotics. They don't give you antibiotic and say, hey, you're going to take these for the next 40, 50 years. Hope that infection goes away. They say, you're going to take these 12 of these and then come back and we'll check it out and see how things are going, right? I want that, more of that philosophy than, sorry, brother, your brain's broken. You're just going to have to take pills for the rest of your life. Because I don't necessarily think that's the case in most instances or many instances.
Wow, so good. I read an article recently that talked about helpful tips on dealing with a loved one with anxiety. And one of the things said, it said, don't try to fix them.
Come on, man.
At what stage, when you have an individual, say for instance, a loved one, even maybe a spouse or a brother or sister, whatever, that you know it has an issue, how do you, I guess, support them without being pushy or I guess, aggressive in the matter? How can you best support them? And then keep your own self sane, because sometimes it's hard dealing with those kind of individuals.
That's right. So a unique quirk of our brain is when those alarms go off, it actually takes your frontal lobe offline, your rational thinking part of your head offline. And it makes perfect sense, right? So 10,000 years ago, I'm hanging out in a cave and a bear shows up at the front of that. My brain did not want me going through the rigor, like, I wonder if that's a nice bear. I wonder if that's one of them petting, hugging bears, right? Because if that happened, I'm probably going to die, right? So it said, run! Like, it just said, get out of here. So it actually, over time, developed a mechanism. Take that front part of your brain offline. It's going to trade accuracy for speed, right? That's how occasionally you hear somebody holding a cell phone get shot, because we're in a really messy, heightened situation. That looks close enough to me, right? So similarly, when someone's struggling with anxiety, someone's struggling with depression, and I sit down and start lecturing them, they can't hear anything I'm saying, right? They can. Eventually, I turn into a threat too, because I contribute to their shame cycle. I contribute to their feeling less than. I become part of their problem, right? And so what I like to say, the only thing on planet Earth that heals anxiety, that cures it, is other people, relationships. And so what most people most of the time need is not a lecture, is not info. They need me just to hold their hand and look them in the eye and say, hey, that really sucks. I'm sorry. Can we just hug, right? Unless hugging is part of the problem, right? Letting somebody else tell me. So I often will have, especially husbands, man, they're the worst, about, I just need to tell them that they stop. Like, man, your partner's smarter than you, probably, right? Just sit down and say, hey, I hate that that happened. If they need your advice, they will ask you for it. But until they ask you for it, just be with them. It's healing through presence. Even in counseling, man, the number one healing modality in counseling is not what school you went to, is not how you practice. It's the relationship between the counselor and the therapist, right? The relationship heals. And so just presence, right? Just presence starts over. If everyone would stop giving advice and just sit with each other, just listen and say, man, I hate that for you. Over time, people start to feel better. And then they might ask you, hey, you don't seem to struggle with this. Whenever you get stressed, what do you do? Now they've invited you in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you mentioned sitting with each other, and I can't help but to say most times in a room when we were allowed to get together and sit with one another, we were all looking at these devices.
Off, dude, off.
You have a show that you talk about why social media is toxic. Please dig into that and help us in there.
Dude, this sounds like a little soundbite. It kind of is. We have 1,000 friends on the internet, man, and we got nobody to help us like move our couch. I've got 500 friends on LinkedIn, and I got nobody to help me change a flat tire before work because I don't even know my neighbor, right? And if I go knock on his door, he's going to have a gun in his pocket, and he's going to be like, hey, what's going on? What's the problem? And that is a real quick shift. That was not that way 15 years ago. That was not that way 20 years ago. And I know that because I used to have my dad used to have to go to the office early. I had my neighbors' dads tie my ties before school dances, and my neighbors helped with X, Y, and Z, and my dad helped other. Man, it's just changed like that, right? The challenge with social media is multifold. Number one is connection is not the same as communication. So much of our communication is nonverbal, right? And when we're just exchanging, characters, black and white, zeros and ones, hey, I'll meet you there. I'll see you there. I can even text my wife. I love you. I love you. I love you. She's getting 20%. She's getting the data part of that, but she's not seeing my eye crinkles. She's not seeing my shoulders come back a little bit. She's not seeing the eyebrow go up. She's not hearing it, right? So we are communicating a lot with one another, but we're not connecting. And then the other thing, man, is those phones, dude, they are designed, they are addictive boxes by design, right? They are designed to keep you completely engrossed and looped in there. And man, I've had some hard moments with myself. Like I've got my kids. I'm like, yeah. I just become a scroller and a nodder, right? I'm just like nodding like, yeah, cool, man. That sounds great. And my kid is literally dying from relational starvation right next to me, right? My wife is dying from relational starvation right next to me. And so these boxes have just consumed us, and we got to put them down and begin looking at each other. And it's uncomfortable, man. It's uncomfortable just to sit there in silence and take that awkward sip and just kind of look around like, so what's up? You know what I mean? And we've got to push through that. Otherwise, man, our alarms are all going off because it's saying, hey, we're lonely, right?
Yeah. I guess it's no secret that probably mental illness, mental health has been an issue probably since day one of mankind.
Right.
But do you think our desire as a society to continue to develop and push and want to reinvent, do you think that has contributed to our overall mental wellness as a whole?
I think if you look at what keeps us well, which is community and relationships, which is a constant, a feeling of safety and connectedness. And, just looking at Maslow's hierarchy, right? Those basic things. I'm okay here. I've probably got things to eat. I've got a group of people who love me. And if I don't have something to eat, they're going to share, right? And vice versa. If we look at what the ethos of our culture is, which is have value by what you achieve and accomplish. Have value by how busy and how fast you move. Have value in your individuality. I just need to be me. All of those things undercut the way we are designed to be well. And so I think it's bigger than just the constant move and achievement. I think it is the solution. The thing that makes the most money is always the cure, not the prevention, right? I had a buddy about a decade ago. He worked in the supplement industry. And he said, man, everybody in the nutrition and health space is kind of tripping out a little bit because the science is getting real clear. If you want to be well, have really good relationships, eat whole foods, move, like exercise, and then go to bed. And that's kind of the cornerstone of being well. And he's like, you can't sell that. And so we've got to have problems that then we try to sell on top of these, and then those make their own problems. And then right. So all that to say, I think our entire cultural ethos of individuality, of it's me versus the world, and I'm only have value by what I accomplish and I achieve. I think the combination of those on top of this loneliness thing, you do it by yourself, you don't need nobody else. Just look at your box. Man, I think that's been this nexus of mental health challenges all over the place, man.
So good, John. I've enjoyed my time with you. Before I let you go, we got to talk about
awesome.
Your show, the Dr. John Delony Show, and your book, Redefining Anxiety. Share with us a little bit about it.
So the show is it's a caller-driven show. It's we're real people with real challenges are calling, and we are figuring out live on the air, and it's been remarkable. In a million years, I couldn't especially, but the team around us never could have imagined it would have taken off like it has. But it's been a blast. I think everybody walking alongside the callers, listening to their experiences and their relationships and their mental health challenges, all those is striking a chord with folks. The book, man, the Redefining Anxiety, it's a little bitty thing. It was, I laughed and said, man, it's an 80-page grad school paper, but then it made the bestseller list. Man, it ended up taken out from under us because people are so desperate for a simple, what is happening and what can we do about it? We can all read big counseling books. We can all go have therapy for 8 years and all that kind of stuff. And I'm pro therapy. I'm going to see a counselor next Wednesday. So I'm all about it, but what is going on in my head and what can I do about it? And so this is straight to the point. It's, let's just solve some of these challenges right now with what you can control in your life and in your heart and your mind, man. And it's been pretty cool.
So good. Well, I am a fan, Dr. John. I appreciate you joining me. Listen, let us know where we can connect with you, buy the book, and all that good stuff.
You can go. I just learned you don't have to say www anymore because my wife tells me I was born in the wrong century. You can go to johndelony.com, or you can follow me at John Delony and pick up the book wherever you buy books. And then the podcast, you can get it wherever you watch podcasts, man. And hey, I'm really grateful for you. You asked some of the best questions of any interview I've been on. So absolutely, it's been a treasure to hang out with you, man. Take care and stay in school. Don't do drugs. All that stuff.
For sure. Take care, John.
All right.